Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Suranjali Steel, and like I always say, if you are somebody that loves literature and is all about literature, then this is the channel for you. In our video today, we're going to discuss Aristotle. Now we're going to begin with the introduction to his life. We're going to look at the list of works and ideas which we are going to discuss in detail in the videos that are to come. Now you're well aware of the fact that we've begun with literary criticism, and of these critics which we're supposed to study, we've actually focused on the Greek critics first. And of these Greek critics, we have completed Socrates and Plato. We've discussed their relationship, their life, their philosophies, ideas, and their works. And now we're going to move on to Aristotle. So Socrates' student was Plato, and Plato's student is Aristotle. So we're going to look at the things that we're supposed to know about them. You know, the similarities and dissimilarities in their ideas, the philosophical ideas of Aristotle's, like the four causes and substance theory, and definitely one which is absolutely necessary in literary criticism. We need to discuss the work Poetics by Aristotle. So we're going to look at all of this in detail. This is an introduction video, the facts that you need to know as students of literature regarding his life. So let's get right into it. Okay, so guys, let us begin by having a look at his life. Okay, a few things. This is an overview, then we'll dive deep into it. Okay, so Aristotle was an ancient Greek philosopher and a polymath. So you have to know what a polymath is. A polymath is an individual whose knowledge spans a substantial number of subjects. So that means he has idea or knowledge of various subjects, many subjects, more than one or two. Okay, so more than one or two, he has many, he has knowledge over many subjects. Now, you might say that, okay, jack of all trades, master of none. No, it is not like that. He actually has knowledge of many subjects. He's written on these, he's contributed to these subjects. Okay, so his writings cover a broad range of subjects. Okay, spanning the natural sciences. Then you have philosophy, linguistics, economics, politics, psychology, and the arts. So you see, you know, you have to remember one thing. As far as Aristotle, Socrates, and these critics that we're covering right now, they come from the BC era. Okay, it's not the AD era yet. So we are covering these critics who come from the BC era. Now, you understand this, natural sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, which we study in school today, they were not as developed then. They were just in the birthing stage. Okay, they were not, even the ideas are not developed as much as they have been now. And you have to also understand that in 100 years from now, there'll be more sets of findings and ideas and facts that will be added to these subjects. Okay, so knowledge is being added every day. Knowledge is being found out every day. Okay, and then it's being added to these branches of science. Now, these people like Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, they actually formed the basis with their philosophy, with their ideas. They were talking at a time when these things have not really, they have not really even taken one step ahead, maybe baby steps ahead. They have not yet flowered or bloomed into the sciences that we study today. Okay, this is very recent, but they are talking about this hundreds of years back. So you have to understand their genius. You have to understand the level or the depth of their knowledge, the depth of their thinking, how they observed the world around them. You know, you have to understand how deep their thinking went. So he was a polymath, and these are the kind of subjects that he added his knowledge to, that he contributed to and talked about and wrote about. So it's not a small thing. You have to understand that today we talk about many subjects that we study, okay? But in those times, to be actually thinking of these things, to laying the groundwork for philosophy, groundwork for thinking, natural sciences, arts, psychology, you have to understand their genius, okay? So Aristotle was a polymath. Now, as the founder of the Peripatetic school of philosophy in the Lyceum in Athens, he began the wider Aristotelian tradition that followed, which set the groundwork for the development of modern science. Now, you have to understand the Peripatetic school of philosophy and the Lyceum in Athens. So, he actually established a school in the Lyceum. Now you have to understand what is the Lyceum first. So the Lyceum was a temple in Athens dedicated to Apollo Lysias. Now you have to know that Aristotle was not a citizen of Athens. He was born somewhere else. Okay. And because he was not a citizen of Athens, he could not own property there. So you need, in order to actually teach, if you have to establish a school, you need land, and then you have to construct a school and then teach there. So because he was not born in Athens, he was not allowed to own property. So he used this temple. Lyceum is actually a temple, okay? Its remains were found in Athens, okay, not too long ago. His remains were, the remains of the Lyceum were found in Athens. And this Lyceum, no, it had columns in it. Like, you have the roof, and then you suppose you have the base, and then you have many columns in it, columns as in pillars, okay, inside the temple. And there were pillars in the temple, and there were walkways in between. Like, if there are pillars in a row, then in between there are walkways, okay, where people could walk. So there were so many walkways, no, that's why it was called the peripatetic school. There is a legend that probably because Aristotle used to walk while teaching and talking, that's why it's called the peripatetic school. But also, peripatetic comes from the words peripetoi or peripetos. Okay, so we're going to look at that. So I hope the Lyceum is clear, that it is a temple with many columns, and it is here that Aristotle and his followers met and discussed ideas and inquiries, conducted inquiries. So he could not own property, so he used this temple, the Lyceum, for his teachings, where he could teach. Okay, so it is here that the people met, and because of the columns, and because also this legend that Aristotle used to walk while teaching, it is known as the peripatetic school of philosophy. So you know, it is Plato's academy, and this is Aristotle's Lyceum. So the peripatetic school was a philosophical school founded in 335 BC by Aristotle in the Lyceum in ancient Athens. It was an informal institution, informal as in it was not recognized by the state. It was not really, formal institutions are like our schools and colleges and universities, but this was an informal institution whose members met or conducted philosophical inquiries and scientific inquiries. Okay, so these were like-minded people who met and talked about these concepts. Okay, the term peripatetic is a transliteration of the ancient Greek word which means of walking or given to walking about. Of walking, the literal translation of peripatetic is of walking in the Greek language, is of walking or walking about. Okay, so the peripatetic school founded by Aristotle was actually known simply as peripatos. Okay, Aristotle's school came to be so named because of the peripatoi, walkways, some covered or with colonnades. Okay, so there were walkways. Okay, so that's why it was called peripatoi. Okay, that's where the word comes from. Of the Lyceum where the members met. The legend that the name came from Aristotle's alleged habit of walking while lecturing may have started with this person of Smyrna. You don't have to really remember the person, but just know that there's a legend that exists that Aristotle used to walk while teaching. He had this habit of walking within the Lyceum while lecturing. So that's probably why it is called the peripatetic school, and also it's because of the peripatoi or the columns inside the Lyceum. So I hope this is clear. Now, unlike Plato, like I've already mentioned, Aristotle was not a citizen of Athens and so could not own property. He and his colleagues therefore used the grounds of the Lyceum as a gathering place, just as it had been used by earlier philosophers such as Socrates. Little is known about Aristotle's life, so this is where he was born. He was born in the city of Stagira in northern Greece during the classical period. Now, if you remember from my Plato and Socrates video, classical period refers to a period of 200 years, and it actually encompasses the 4th and the 5th centuries BC, or the 5th and the 4th centuries BC. Okay, so this is the classical period of 200 years. Now let's move on further. So Aristotle joined Plato's academy at 17 or 18 years of age and remained there till the age of 37. So that's roughly about 20 years. He studied there. Okay, yeah. So he studied there for 20 years. So he studied in Plato's academy. So he studied there till the time that Plato had taught. Okay, so he was his student. After Plato's death, he had given the charge to somebody else. And I think it's about that time that he left Athens. Okay. So shortly after Plato died, Aristotle left Athens and at the request of Philip II of Macedon, tutored his son Alexander the Great beginning in 343 BC. So Aristotle had returned to Athens, establishing his own school known as the Lyceum. So we talked about the Lyceum. So you have to remember, it's not that he just came to Athens and then he studied under Plato and then he established his school. No, it was not like that. He studied under Plato Then after Plato's death, the charge of the school was passed on to somebody else, and probably he did not really align with what was being taught. So, and in the meantime, also he was called by Philip II of Macedon, so he decided to leave Athens. Okay, so he comes to Athens, not a citizen of Athens. He comes to Athens, studies in the academy for 20 years. He leaves Athens again, and then he comes back to Athens again. Okay, so he leaves and then he comes back, and then he establishes his own school, the Lyceum. He conducted courses on his school for the next 12 years. So again, see, he comes to Athens, leaves Athens. Again, he comes back to Athens. Okay. So this is after coming back, after he establishes his school, he teaches there for 12 years. Okay. The period in Athens between 335 and 323 is when Aristotle is believed to have composed many of his works. So this is the period, this is the timeline you have to remember. He wrote many dialogues, of which only fragments have survived, and those that have survived are in treatise form. They are generally thought to be lecture notes for his students. So when you think about treatise, let us just look at the definition first, okay? It is a discourse on it is a systematic written discourse on some subject concerned with investigating or exposing the principles of the subject and its conclusions. Now, what actually amazes me about Aristotle is the fact that if you think about, it's mentioned here that whatever survives of Aristotle's writings, okay, these are in treatise form. Now, treatise is what? They're actually investigating and exposing a subject, its principles, trying to go to the root of it all. Okay, that's what he does. When we'll be discussing his works, you'll understand it better. So for now, just know they're in treatise form. And what actually amazes me is that they said that they are thought to be, what is the generally thought now is that these are probably lecture notes for his students. Now, when I think of the lecture, if these are lecture notes and when we study them, you will understand, can you see the depth? These are just lecture notes. So imagine what his lectures must have been like. You know, like we write notes, also lecture notes. We jot down what our teachers tell us. So, you know, these are lecture notes of Aristotle, and they in itself have so much richness, so much of knowledge and so much of ideas. So imagine, like I sometimes do think that what his lectures must have been like, you know. So you have to understand the genius that Aristotle is, that Socrates is, that Plato is, okay, in the line of philosophy as far as Greek writers are concerned. So most important treatises include physics, metaphysics, Nicomachean ethics, politics, on the soul, and poetics. So we're going to discuss physics, metaphysics, we're going to discuss poetics also. So we're going to, please do stay tuned for that. It's going to come in the next videos. So Plato was appointed head of the Royal Academy of Macedon. Aristotle encouraged Alexander towards Eastern conquest. Near the end of his life, Alexander and Aristotle became estranged, and after Alexander's death, anti-Macedonian sentiments in Athens was rekindled. So this is very in shortcut, but I'll just give you some extra points. He was actively involved, okay, in Macedon, okay, and then he was the head of the Royal Academy of Macedon also. Now, he and Alexander the Great were pretty close because, of course, student-teacher relationship. And then he also encouraged Alexander towards his Eastern conquest, okay. And there are a few things that he does say, which is very ethnocentric, okay, Aristotle does say, but we don't have to look at that because we're going to discuss literary criticism. So he does encourage Alexander to go on the Eastern conquest, but towards the end of the towards the end of his life, because of Alexander's treatment of the Persians also, they kind of differed in their opinion. So there was like, you can say that there was kind of not really a shield or a shade, but there was some kind of a break, okay, between him and Alexander. And after Alexander's death, anti-Macedonian sentiments in Athens was rekindled. And you have to remember that he was in Athens at the time. So Aristotle was denounced for impiety. Again, repeating of the history. If you remember Socrates was also charged with impiety and corrupting the youth of Athens. Here too, Aristotle was denounced for impiety, prompting him to flee his mother's family estate, at which occasion he was said to have stated. Okay, this is what Aristotle must have said, okay. So he had said, I will not let Athens to sin twice against philosophy. So like I've mentioned, twice, I will not let Athens sin twice against philosophy. The first time being Socrates, when Socrates was given the death penalty by drinking a cup of hemlock. So he says, I will not let Athens sin twice against philosophy. So he did have a lot of respect and reverence for Socrates, and he died of natural causes, okay, later the same year in 322 BC, and having named his student Antipater as his chief executor. That means somebody, this person, would carry his work forward, would look after the school, okay, he will carry the work forward. So this is about his life. We're just going to look at the list of works which we're going to cover. We'll discuss them a little bit. We're going to look at the list of works which we're going to cover in the coming videos. This will just be a short background to the works, okay? So let's get right into that. Okay, so let's have a look at the works, okay? So we'll look at prior analytics first. So this is a work by Aristotle on reasoning, known as syllogistic. So we have syllogism even in our competitive exams nowadays. So syllogism, and it is a form of arguing in which two statements are used to prove that a third statement is true. For example, first statement, all humans are mortal. Second statement, I am a human. Therefore, I am mortal. So, it is the deductive system. Now see, I've already distinguished between the inductive and deductive system of reasoning where in detail, okay, in depth in my Francis Bacon video. So if you're interested in learning more about syllogism, about the deductive and inductive system of reasoning, then do have a look at the Francis Bacon video. I have given examples from Sherlock Holmes. I have given the example of Sherlock Holmes because he follows the deductive system, and Aristotle was the first ever person, like his syllogism, he was the first ever person to actually talk about this deductive system of reasoning. So you have it's top-down logic. The conclusion is based on two premises which are assumed to be true. So you know, all humans are mortal. I am human, therefore I am mortal. So the statement will be based on the two premises. Inductive reasoning, I will just give a small example. You will not just take two premises. You'll actually, it's the basis for scientific experimentation. Experimental science is based on inductive system, where a person, if you say that, okay, do dolphins have lungs? So I will not look at the premises that, okay, all dolphins have lungs, or all dolphins. I will not look at all of that. I will not take premises only. It is bottom-up logic. I will actually go out there, get a dolphin, I'll experiment, I'll observe. I will observe, and then I will conclude whether the dolphin actually has lungs or not. I'll see for myself. So the inductive system by Francis Bacon is the ABC of experimental science today. And deductive system was what Aristotle advocated for. It is what he introduced. And if you have this interest in detailed study, then do refer to my Francis Bacon video. Now here you have to remember that it is a work by Aristotle. It is on reasoning, known as syllogistic, composed around 350 BCE, okay, being one of the 6 extant Aristotelian works on logic and scientific method. Now, he did not write his book like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these are my books. No, he did not write it like that. Aristotle wrote his works, okay. His followers later, his followers compiled them into these 6 books in this order, okay. So it is this, this prior analytics is one of the 6 extant Aristotelian works on logic and scientific method. It is part of what the later peripatetics called the organon. So this compiled 6 works is known as the organon. As opposed to that, we have organum Novum Organum by Francis Bacon. I already talked about it in that video, so you'll understand it better now. I told you that we'll talk about organon in Aristotle's video, from that video, so this is what we are talking about. Organon is the name of the work, the compiled work. The 6 works together are called organon. The works of Aristotle on logical analysis and dialectic were compiled into a set of 6 books called the organon, meaning instrument, tool or organ, around 40 BCE by Andronicus of Rhodes or others among his followers. The books are, these are the 6 books, if you can remember the names will be good. Categories on interpretation, prior analytics, which we just discussed on syllogism. Then we have, I'm sorry, my screen just gave some problem. Okay, yeah, posterior analytics, topics on sophisticated refutations. So these are the names, okay, of the 6 books. Then we have metaphysics. Now, metaphysics is important for us because this is where most of his philosophies lie, and they differ to a certain extent with Plato's. okay, philosophies. So metaphysics is one of the principal works of Aristotle, in which he develops the doctrine that he calls first philosophy. So whatever he talks about in metaphysics, which we are going to discuss in detail in the next video, whatever he talks about in the metaphysics, he calls it his first philosophy, okay. The work is a compilation of various texts which treats abstract subjects, notably substance theory. Now, I'll call back theory of forms. Okay, theory of forms by Plato. This is theory of substances by Aristotle. Now, you have to remember that Plato's student was Aristotle. Okay, so he differed with the master in certain points, and he gives reasons. Okay, he gives reasons for his belief in the substance theory. So you will also have to understand that, why did he give reasons? He believed in certain things. Plato never gave reasons for believing. He stated things. Now, Aristotle is stating things, then he's giving reasons also. Okay, and backing up his claim. Why? You have to understand, because he had some differences with his teacher. That's why he gave his reasons. Okay. So he has a substance theory. It differs with the theory of forms. We're going to discuss it in the next video. All right. So we have the substance theory, the different kinds of causation. This also we're going to discuss in the next video, his theory of causation. Form and matter. Okay, this also we're going to discuss. The existence of mathematical objects and the cosmos, which together constitute much of the branch of philosophy, later known as metaphysics. So, metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that studies the fundamental nature of reality. So see, Plato also addressed the question of reality through his theory of forms. What is real? What is the world of imitations, receptacles, he says. And this includes the first principles of being or existence. Okay, he addresses all of this. Identity, change, space and time. We discussed in theory of forms that Plato says that ideas are atemporal and aspatial. So we are going to see what Aristotle talks about also. Then cause and effect. Okay, he's got his theory of causation. Also we're going to talk about necessity, actuality and possibility. Actuality and possibility. He doesn't see everything at face value. Okay, he sees things as being there's potentiality or potential or potency, which actually develops to actuality. For example, when you look at, say, a larva, or if you look at a caterpillar, you say it has the potential to become a butterfly. When it does become a butterfly, it has actualized into a butterfly. If you see a seed, you say it has the potential to become a tree. When it actually becomes a tree, it has actualized. So these are the kind of philosophical things he talks about. So he talks about actuality, about possibility. Metaphysics is considered one of the four main branches of philosophy. It includes questions about the nature of consciousness and the relationship. He also talks about how we perceive things, matter and form, how we associate with them. He talks about all of this. And the relationship between mind and matter, between substance and attribute, between potentiality and actuality, which I just said. So we're going to discuss all of this. And of course, before we end with Aristotle, we are going to dedicate one whole video to a detailed analysis of his work, Poetics, because it's important from the literary criticism point of view. So I'm going to discuss all of this from the videos that are to come. I think 2 or 3 videos will be sufficient for it. And with this, we're done with the introduction. I really hope this introduction has been helpful for you. And if it has, then don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe to my channel for similar content. I believe introductions are very important because they give us an insight into the life of the personality or the writer or philosopher that we're discussing. It does go a long way into telling us or making us understand the sensibility of the time, and in turn it makes it easier for us to understand the works also. So I think that this introduction is enough. After this, we're going to dive deep into his works. So I really hope that this video has been helpful. Till we meet again, I hope that you stay healthy and happy. See you in the next one.